everybody, welcome back to my coloring channel. Today I'm going to go over the recap of all of the books that I have covered in this last season. And so this is going to be with Johanna's Christmas, Soulmates by Karlzon, Worlds Within Worlds, Meine, Reise, Durch, Afrika, and even a bit of watercolor with Watercolor Magic, Flora and Fauna from the films of Harry Potter. So this one is a quarterly recap, which means it is my winter collection, which are the months of December, January, and February. I'm tending to do them in 3-month sections because I'm not very fast as a colorist, and so it takes me a while to get through the pages, and I'll have more to show you if I show you them every few months as opposed to every month. But that might change depending on, well, I guess depending on my mood. So the first one that I did was following Chris Ching's color along in Johanna's Christmas, and I did this, of course, in the month of December, finishing it on December 13th as my main Christmas page. And what I really love about the process of doing this is how it really taught me about layering. So normally as a colorist, I do a lot of blending. I love doing blends. It's fast, it's dirty, it's easy, it works well with Prismacolors. And so learning how to just slow it down and just really layer up until you get to the burnishing stage helps create this beautiful luminant glow with these pages. As you can see, it's very bright, very vibrant. Another thing that's really cool about layering is that the colors come across much cleaner. So when I'm blending, I'm often, like I said, just, I guess, mushing colors into each other. And what that does is it does muddy the colors and desaturate them slightly. And so I'm interested in trying more layering in the future, especially if I'm trying to maintain some of this really color vibrancy, but it does take time. This took a very long time to do. And it takes a lot of patience as well. One thing that's different from this than the normal Chris Chang tutorial is I didn't do a background. She has a bit of an ombre effect of having it really dark and black in the middle and just kind of fading it out to the shadows on the sides. I left it that way because I wasn't actually sure how exactly I wanted to color the background. I saw online some people made it look like it was on a door or on like wooden planks or just a black background, but like I said, I wasn't sure how I wanted to approach it. At one point I was thinking of making it look like it was in a pot and just having like a terracotta outline and then I guess dirt and shadows in the inside. But again, I didn't want to mess with it, and so I decided to leave it, and then I never came back to it. And so it's finished, but it's also unfinished. In the future, I might add a background depending on how I feel and if I can be inspired by anything as well with that. And that's it for the only one I've ever colored in Johanna's Christmas. A gorgeous book, but again, it's kind of intimidating. There's not that many line markings for where shadows go, which makes it up to you, but then you also have the weight of the responsibility of choice. And then you look online at some of the works people do and they're just so astoundingly beautiful. It's hard to feel motivated to create something yourself when A, it's difficult when there's less lines, and B, there's so much gorgeous work out there that's already been done and posted. But yes, Johanna's Christmas, I plan on doing at least one a year at the Christmas season, and hopefully slowly over time getting through this book. So the second that I did, so that's the first of 13, the second was from Soulmates, and I'm counting double page spreads as 2, so I guess I have 4 here since I have 2 double page spreads. This is the first time I've ever colored in Karlzon, and it's also the first time that I have ever done a portrait, and I'm really pleased with how it turned out. So the first one that I did is this one right up over here. And it's the one of the woman with the swiftlets on the side, and I was so happy with it. Because I was a bit nervous getting started at first, I again began with a tutorial, and that's in part because every time I come across a new coloring book artist or one I'm not as comfortable with, it's helpful to know strategies to really make their work shine. I would say I'm the most comfortable with Kerby's work because the way he draws the lines and the shadows makes sense to me. And so I followed a tutorial online of, I guess, this part here, and the skin as well. And then I branched into my own, and I did my own hair, I did my own jewels on her head, and I did my own flowers, making them yellow over here instead. And for the background, I switched it to my own creamy yellow background using some distress inks. And so I think it's really gorgeous. I do love how it turns out. Part of me wishes I made these birds blue to have a bit more blue come in, but like I said, I was also just following a tutorial at that point. And the main thing I'm proud of is figuring out how to do hair and just making it so shiny, but mostly how to do skin. For me, doing skin, the hardest thing is actually the cheeks. And part of that's because I don't really wear makeup. And so since I don't wear makeup, I don't really know how contouring works and all that jazz that just you see online on Reels and TikToks and things. And so it just took me a while to figure out what are the highlights, where do I go with that, how do I define where the nose like begins and the cheek begins. And so it's a work in progress, but it makes me very happy and it affirms that I can do it. So I went straight ahead right after that. This one I finished on the 31st of January, and then I jumped right into this one next, and this took me around 2 weeks to do. So this one here, I decided to do a watercolor background, and I have a mix of Winsor & Newton inks with Schmincke and some Daniel Smith, and so I just chose the colors that I liked. And as I did it, I also put salt on it so that you can have this, I guess you can sort of see it here, this textured effect that you can see here and here. And so and I also put in some gold paint as well. And so it just made it really flowy and liquidy and cloud-like with all the different colors. And I used, I guess, what's it called, masking fluid to make these little dots and stars. But my masking fluid is really old and really clumpy, and so I couldn't make them fine, and ended up just being big blobs of blob. But it still works out with the overall effect to add some texture with that background. And then with the skin, I used a skin combo from Color with Claire on one of her dark skin tutorials, and I also used a colorless blender. So I only did 2 layers of the skin color, and then I put a colorless blender on it to just make it go quicker and make it shine more. And the way I did the skin was I started on the areas I was most comfortable with, so the forehead and the neck, and then kind of like worked towards the area I was least comfortable with, which is, as you know, the cheeks. It's still strange to me. It feels like it's too high. I have no idea. And so that was really fun to do. One thing that I'm going to change next time, however, is I'm going to not use a colorless blender, because with the colorless blender, the colors do end up coming across not as smooth and vibrant, and it doesn't necessarily have that luminant glowing effect that you'd want with skin. And so instead of using that, next time I'm just going to use way more layers and kind of do what I learned from Johanna's Christmas, just build it forward with those different layers. But as you can see with that blending method, it does kind of muddy into each other as opposed to have a smoother, more vibrant look. But it's, again, the second portrait I've ever done with coloring pencils, so it's a work in progress and I'm learning. And then, yeah, the rest of this all was done with Prismacolor pencils. And I did a tutorial video with Olivier Odorant on how to erase white lines. So I kind of like used a white Derwent Inktense pencil, activated it, and then on top of that went over it with Posca pen, and then on top of that went over it with the coloring pencils so that I can get rid of some of the original designs and just make those pure pearls there. And I did the same here just to get rid of some of those lines and even it out a tiny bit as well. It took a while too to decide also like where does this end and this color begin. So it was a lot of just like slow going to get it to where I wanted it to be, but overall I was really happy with it. And like I said, it did take around 2 weeks to do altogether, but it was lovely, and is one of my favorite pages of the month. Yeah, so there you go. That's Soulmates by Hannah Karlzon. Alright, so then the next book is, I was coming back to Meine, Reise, Durch, Afrika, and for this one I was gifted for Christmas a set of 36 polychromos pencils, and so I wanted to try them out over here. So this is the page that I did, so a double page spread. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is my 6th and 7th pages, and honestly it's not my favorite. in part because with limited pencils, I wasn't able to get as much blend as possible, but also because my goal was to use every single pencil, like all 36 pencils on these pages, so I can experiment with them, see how the colors go. And what I learned from that is the hard polychromos pencils can tear up the paper slightly. And so over here you can kind of see that it's a bit torn right there on this section of the leaf coming down. So you have to be careful with them when you build up the layers to not push too hard, because with it's called Prismacolors, whenever you get bored, you just like smush it and then it's done. But these ones you have to be more delicate, I suppose. It's a way to learn. I learned that I really love the vibrancies of the yellows going into the reds. Those are really nice color combos. And because I had very limited colors, I was experimenting more with other ways of doing colors, and so having this really interesting bluish green as a leaf was a nice discovery there too. I also found out that my favorite pencil in the set is the dark indigo, because it's the perfect shadow color for everything. Like I used it there, I used it there, I used it there. I think I even used it in like here. So the dark indigo blue is a really nice color to use. And yeah, so that is it for the polychromos. Oh, and another thing is they don't really have light colors, so at least not in the 36 set. So to try to make it super light like this, what I did was I just put the layer on really lightly, and then I went over it with whites. And I think I actually ended up using a Prismacolor white to kind of mix with it to make it light like that. Even here, to lighten it out, was just a really thin layer and then white. Because normally if I do a pencil and I just do it really lightly, I don't like how it looks unfinished, right? I like it to be like the truth of the paper killed. But if you want it to be a light color, you can't kill the truth of a paper with it, because then it'll darken. So then I guess use white would be my response to that. It's still something I'm experimenting with. Another thing is with this background, I used my super small set of Neocolor 2s, and I was trying to get it to just be like this nice, earthy, coming into the dark, light on the outside. But, as you can see, you can see how the marks on the paper, it's a bit uneven and blotchy, so that didn't make me very happy either. And I ended up going over with a Posca pen to darken it here, and this entire thing I just used a Posca pen in the background. So on camera it looks really pretty, but in person, or if you pull the camera near, you can just see all the pen strokes, and I don't like that at all. So it's not my favorite page because it's new. And I think if I'm to change, I have to change the tone of the language that I'm using. It was very instructional because it taught me so many things about new materials that I almost never use. The Neocolors I almost never use. Prismacolor, first time I'm using it. Rita Berman as an artist, very new to her work too. So it was definitely a learning experience and a learning curve. And I need to just keep practicing and keep working with them. I guess this is also one of my favorite combos here, if you think about colors, because they just go so well together. But yeah, that's it for Meine, Reise, Durch, Afrika, and I'm going to be soon actually starting over. And so I bought myself a second book, and I'm going to go through this and just have color alongs for all of them on. I was thinking of doing it chronologically, but that also is giving me anxiety and artistic block, because now it's like I have to do this page, and I have an idea of how to do it. I don't know if I have the skill to do it, but I'll get to there. But this is now going to be my practice, where I can do all my practices, and if I like it, then I'll do another color along here more formally, so that I can have better quality final pieces with the practice and then the final. So that's it for Meine, Reise, Durch, Afrika. So next one coming on in is Worlds Within Worlds. Last time I think I only colored one in. This time I went ham. I really did a lot of Kerby Rosanes, and this is pretty much the only Kerby book that I had color in. I have one done in Alien Worlds, and that's it. Otherwise it's only this book, and I'm really hoping to finish it. It's such a gorgeous, beautiful book. So the most latest one I did was this one here, and this one was done on the 27th of February. And if you know the Facebook group, the Fantasy World of Kerby Rosanes, they have a monthly challenge, and the challenge was jungle, and so that's why I chose this one. So some things that were interesting about it is I used Derwent Inktense on the hand and the jungle, and I think I'm really happy with the colors that I chose and how they just really went well together, especially with the hand, just having this mossy granite look with this greenish stone for the hand was what I was going for, and so I really love that color combo that I chose for that. And I recorded this one too, so once I edit that video, it'll be up as a color along. For the sky, I'm not as happy with. And again, I'm trying to experiment. So I could be happy and stick only with what I know I'm good at, which is Prismacolor pencils, but I'm not going to grow as an artist if I do that. And so I'm trying to push myself with some of these multimedia approaches to do them much better. And so that's why I pushed myself here. So I used, again, a Neocolor 2 as a base, and then I went over it with some soft pastels. I inherited some soft pastels and wanted to use those. And so at first it was great, except I think the colors I chose weren't the greatest, in the sense that I should have made this yellow to orange and not have it be red. The red was too much at first, and it felt as though it was like a bleeding sky, and it was just it was a very pinkish red too. So then to fix it, I went over it with my Prismacolors to mute it out, and so I just pulled the orange down into the yellow and not have so much yellow. I darkened the red slightly and added orange into it as well, so that it's a bit of a darker sky instead of having this pinkish red versus the bright yellow that it was initially, and that really helped just even it out and pull it together. Because I had killed the tooth of the paper, it's still not like it's not blended in. You won't be able to blend it in, but I don't mind. It just adds extra texture. And so then I just had this white like pit pen to kind of draw some of the clouds in a tiny bit, made me make it misty. I wanted to have like actual like dark purple clouds just moving in and out, but I didn't have enough skill to try it, and I felt like I'd ruin it if I start. I did attempt a few here and there, and I just stopped. And just erased them and went over them. And I wanted to give it a horizon line at the bottom and make it seem as though this hand holding stuff is dotting the entire landscape. So then you have some at the bottom here, but it's not the best to draw, and I could have been a bit more careful. I also don't know how to draw very well, so but I tried to have birds around them to give it a bit more intrigue as well, and a tiny little sun here to show that it's sunset. So a lot of experimentation, still trying to, you know, make it a world, make it its own storyline. And like I said, my favorite part is probably just like this green and this hand, and the sunset almost worked, didn't quite, but I'll get there. I'll get there. Like, I've done sunsets in the past that I'm proud of, like this one, that's incredible. And I did it, that's me. And this too, this is also me, but I can do it. Next time, I'm gonna figure out how to do a sunset with more clouds coming in without having to just superimpose this white pit pen on top, which I'm not sure worked. Over here, it was just quite by accident that I had the clouds. I essentially did the Neocolor 2 base, and I went over it with Prismacolor pencils, and then whenever an area was lighter, I just took a white Prismacolor pencil and I just like smushed, and then ended up creating these beautiful cloud effects. It was amazing. It was wonderful. It was really fun. But like I said, too many layers over here with the Neocolor, then the soft pastels, and then Prisma on top, and then white pit pen. It was good, but it took a while. The one that I think I'm one of the most proud of is actually these two. I am so in love with these two. They are 100% my favorite for the section. And yeah, it was coming back to the Prismacolors. Like I said, they're my safe space. I know how they work. They know how I work. We work well together. The sky, what I did there was, again, Neocolor 2 base to experiment, and then on top of that did the Prismacolor, and that just really helps make it blend smooth and well when you have the Prismas on top of a water-based medium like that. And then the rest of it was just Prismacolor straight. And it took a long time because if you're coloring with only pencil, there's a lot that you have to do. I would do around 2 to 3 layers and then burnish in the last one. But again, my mixing style is more blending than layering. And so it's blending with multiple layers of blending, if that makes sense. And so not as crisp as if you're only layering, but still really, really fun. And I loved just how you have these like purple streaks coming down this indigo blue back of these whales. I loved having like the alternate colors and I don't know, just all together. It was really fun to do, and I really, really enjoyed it. Even drew a little horizon line too to separate the water from the sky. And this one was completed on the 1st of January. Okay. So this is another one that I did here, and I had a color along up on the channel too. I did this one mostly with Durant Inktense with a tiny bit of distressed ink in the background. My Eyes Ink off-brand ink, by the way, not the Tim Holtz stuff. And this one I finished on the 7th. And I really, really loved doing it and having the challenge of only doing it with Prismacolor pencils. And I love how you can still get a lot of depth, right? Like that's just a lot of depth over there. And even here, just still leaving a lot of white space to make it golden-ish. I'm very happy I managed to pull that off there. The one thing I wish I did not do was use yellow for the background. And I did that because I wanted it to match this and just have parallel pages. But then it also looks so similar to the one that Karen did on My Colorful Country Life that it just has, it's too similar. It needs to be different from her work because otherwise it looks like I'm copying her. And even though I did have it open as one of my references because I was looking at all the different arts that people were doing, the reason I chose yellow was because of this. And I wish I did blue or some other color because it's too similar to what she ended up doing. Even though my materials were completely different, my color choices were completely different, it's something I wish I had changed. So I'm keeping that in mind for the future, that for any of the coloring that I'm doing, if other big colorists have done it, find some other way of doing it so it doesn't come across as too similar. And then these two were more experimental as well and super, super fun. I finished this on the 20th of January. And I did a pastel background straight without any water basing, so I did a couple layers of that, and then used my electric eraser to kind of draw out these light rays coming over here. And then as I was coloring the rest of it in, I was doing some research of what do these marine iguanas look like, and they're so cool in that the males morph red and blue in mating season, and it's just amazing that they come in with all of these different colors. So I used a bunch of different reference photos to kind of have the variety that is possible with them, and it's so wacko. I love it. So it's not as matchy, I guess, of a page. Like if everything was just that and that color, it would maybe be more it would synthesize a bit better. But I'm just in love with them as creatures. I couldn't stop looking. I went through like 50 different photos of these guys. They're just so amazing. They make me so happy. And then this is all here, Prismacolor pencils. They're all Prismacolor pencils with my pastel in the background, and then my white super fine Posca pen to help me finish out the bubbles. And yeah, so it was a really, really fun page to do. Like I keep saying, really recommend doing it. Oh, and another thing is I was trying to mix my Prismacolor pencils with my polychromos, actually. So a lot of this red is polychromos and a lot of this dark blue is polychromos. And so I was really, really trying to use both of them together so the Prismas could fill in the empty slots of the polys, since I have fewer polys. And so it was just an interesting way of figuring out how they could blend or work together. I guess my main answer is they are very difficult because they're very different mediums to do that, but it's still possible. And like I said, that blue indigo was my favorite, and like what I did was I colored on top of this after doing the initial coloring to make it look like it was in the background. Same there with that dark blue indigo, and a lot of the tail was a dark blue indigo. So it's possible to color it in. I even used some of their lighter blues over there too, and one of the pinks was the polychromos pink. Yeah, so another experiment, little page, a really fun one, and I believe that actually sums up, I think that's it. Yeah, that sums up what I've done in the past 3 months. So I know it doesn't look like that much, right? It's 13 works. It comes to around like a color a week, but that's my pace. I take my time to do it. it's not the fastest thing. And I'm trying to also fit in time to do other kinds of artworks. So for example, in December, so much of December was doing watercoloring cards for people, and even though I don't have too many left because I gave most of them away, this is an example of one of the watercolor cards that I made, and here's another one of another watercolor Christmas card that I made. So I made maybe like, I don't know, almost a dozen watercolor cards, and that was just really, really fun to do, and again took time away from coloring book coloring. I'm also trying to teach myself how to draw, so I signed up for like a Proko course and did lots of drawing stuff. On the side here, I'll show you that too, in my cupboard. Sorry for all the noise. My cupboard's like in front of my desk, and it can be a bit loud. Sorry, my bad. But yeah, so just things like learning how to draw. So I did a bit of a drawing course, and I did quite a few hours of doing some of this before I gave up and went back to my coloring books. So I still need to keep learning how to draw. It's on my mind. It's just not as satisfying when you can color and it's colorful and beautiful, but I'll get there. And I also did some Harry Potter drawing stuff, and I filmed some of this too to maybe make into a video. I thought it could be cool to have like a series of how I watercolored things. So this was Hedwig the Snowy Owl. And the way that this book works is they just give you this outline. That's it. And so I had Hedwig the Snowy Owl, and I had some of their instructions earlier of how to do Hedwig the Snowy Owl here, with some of the colors they suggested. So I did that, and then I also did my own like smoky background, and I used a whiteout pen. I ended up buying this whiteout pen for a masking marker instead of using my very clumpy masking fluid, and I drew the Avada Kedavra curse just before Hedwig died. And so I know that's dark, but the reason I did that is because in the book it was like 2 seconds, and then this very major lovable character is gone, and then the story moves on, and it's just, there's no closure, right? You don't have a dramatic death scene to give your audience emotional closure. Or even in the books, there's a bit more grieving over Hedwig, but again, it's just rushed because everything else happens. So what if the films had slowed down, right? What if it had this emotional musical scene showing the moment Hedwig died as she was saving Harry? You can see like the claws are out. Maybe she was attacking a Dementor who's off stage over here. And I figured that was a way of representing a character whose death was too sudden and not grieved enough in the books, in my opinion. So I watercolored it. The next one is Dobby the house elf, and I used the photo as a reference, and I tried to initially draw the floor with that floor pattern, but I didn't plan it carefully enough, so it was completely whack with perspective. So then I just re-smushed it with watercolor to make it this swirly brown instead, and then it was still boring, so then I added in like the side door that he's kind of looking at, and it still needed more, so then I went with my gouaches and I added the cake. Technically, perspective wise, he's looking up at you, you're super tall, he's super short, you should only be seeing the floor and not the cake. But I also then was like, well, screw perspective and logic. Where's the logic in someone making a cake fly? So I can break the rules of logic if they can break the rules of physics. And so I just drew in the cake over there to make it a bit more interesting as well. And then the final one is this one here. Aragog the Acromantula. I'm still actually not done with this. It's still a work in progress, but I kind of want to show you what I've done with it so far. This is it, like that's it for what they've provided. It's just this sketch with these colors. So I added in the background and the two people in the foreground who, as you know, are Harry and Ron. And so I decided to switch to gouache because this paper is, even though it's watercolor paper, it's tearing really easily. And I did my first layer in gouache. I drew in all these spiders and the rocks and Harry and Ron. And, you know, of course, your critical voice comes in saying things like, this is messy, or why do you have the spiders perfectly with these trees? Like, you could have added more variety. But whatever, I'm learning. Stop talking, stupid voice in my head. And yeah, so I'm working on it still. I need to do a few more layers. I don't really know how to use gouache, but apparently you layer. And once I'm done with that, I'll come back and show you the final product. But yeah, it's fun. And then you have Picket the Bull Truckle, and I don't know what this is, Mimbulus Mimbletonia. I'm planning on doing 5 and then putting those 5 together into a single video. And yes, so that's it. The Harry Potter watercolor magic, learning how to watercolor, but also adding my own pizzazz to it. So thank you very much for watching all of the different works that I have done in the different books that I have. I appreciate that very much. I hope this was a nice video for you to watch as well, and please don't forget to like the video if you liked it and leave me a comment. I love reading comments and answering them if you have any questions. Yes, have a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy life, and goodbye.